Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon and welcome to this regional forum of the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. For those of you in the room that don't know me, my name is Mark Titterington. I'm a co-founder and director of the forum. And it's just fantastic to be here in Copenhagen for this event. For those of you that don't know how we organize our regional forums, we tend to align them with the incoming presidency, assumption of the presidency of the European Council by the relevant member state. And as you all know, Denmark assumes that responsibility on the 1st of July. So it couldn't be more timely for us to be here with you in Copenhagen, debating topics which are really close to the heart of the mission behind the forum, which is how do we get those new ideas, thinking, solutions for a more resilient, sustainable, productive and profitable agri-food system. I am delighted with the sessions that we have got organized this afternoon, which will take us from a look here domestically at Denmark, putting that into the European context and ultimately into a global context as well. And as many of you know, this country has forged a new approach to agri-food system transformation, which we're very much looking forward to getting involved with this afternoon discussing. A couple of housekeeping points as we get into it this afternoon. If I could kindly ask you to ensure that mobile phones are set to silent. The audio and technic team do a fantastic job at the back, but washing out your mobile phone rings is not so easy, and it's distracting when we put it on the website for people to watch back. If there is an emergency, a fire alarm, or my moderation is really terrible this afternoon, which it could be, the escape exit is right here. We'll pull back the curtains, and I invite you to make your way in a calm and orderly manner to the exit. Couple of words of thanks, in addition to all of you for being here. It's great to be working with Arla Foods this afternoon. Long-term admirer of the company. It's been great that Hannah and George, we've been able to engage with you for this event. Made perfect sense. So thank you for supporting us and being part of our partnership. And also to the European Landowners Organization. I'm particularly grateful for them. They had their General Assembly here this morning, and you'll understand why I'm grateful for them in a second. As many of you know, 2024 was a challenging year, let's put it that way and be diplomatic, for politics around the agri-food system. We had protests in the streets in many parts of Europe, particularly in Brussels, just around the corner from my apartment. I think they just finally managed to clear up the hay and the straw and the burning tires about a year later. It was a challenging year, and it wasn't easy to find solutions. And whilst that was going on, I think what was interesting is that Denmark itself was forging a new approach, bringing different partners together, often with divergent views, to come to an agreement on what a green transition could look like for the agri-food system. And in many ways, predated some of the work that came out of the strategic dialogue and has ultimately gone into Commissioner Hansen's vision for the future of agriculture. So when I met Jeppe Bruus, the Minister for Green Transition at the GFFA, not to be confused with the Forum for the Future of Agriculture, the Global Forum for the Future of Agriculture in Berlin in January, and he was talking about what Denmark had done, it was beyond obvious that we should invite him to open this afternoon's conference. That was the best laid plans. Inevitably, parliamentary business intervened, and it meant that he couldn't join us here in person this afternoon. But the reason why I'm so grateful to the European Landowners Organization for devoting part of their General Assembly this morning is that they gave us half an hour on the agenda to be able to have the Minister with us, and we're going to play back his recorded remarks that he made this morning, which I know some of you in the room have already seen, and some of the questions that followed, and then we'll get into our first panel. So you're very welcome. I hope you enjoy the afternoon. I'm really looking forward to the discussion, not just with our panelists, but with all of you. We're a small but mighty crowd. I'm looking forward to your perspectives as well. But to start with, let's hear what the Minister had to say.
My name is Jeppe Bruus. I'm Minister of a new ministry in Denmark, the Ministry of Green Transition. Actually, it's called the Ministry of the Green Tree Part, but it doesn't really translate that well into English. So we call it the Green Transition. It's a new ministry. We formed it, or we established it last August, so nearly a year. And it's the first time in Denmark that we actually have this Ministry of Green Transition. I'll talk you to a little bit about the story of this deal we did, and also the transition that we are in, trying to reshape our landscape, but also create growth and jobs in the food and agricultural sector, especially seen as a part of an economic change. Denmark being a very robust economic country, obviously, but we are in a green transition, sector for sector. I was appointed minister for the first time back in 22 as Minister of Taxation. We have one like that in Denmark. Very few countries do. I see the looks, don't worry. But when I was appointed Minister of Taxation, one of my first tasks was actually to negotiate a deal on a CO2 carbon tax on Danish industries on top of the European quota system. And why the heck do an extra tax on Danish industries that will lower their competitiveness with competitors all over Europe? Because we have higher climate goals. Back in 2019, we had what we call the climate election in Denmark. It was my first time elected, formally to the Danish Parliament. And so we formed back then a one-party social democratic government. I'm a social democrat. And to be able to reach power, we needed to increase our climate goals. And so we ended up on a goal of 70% reduction by 2030. But back in 2019, we had no clue how to reach that goal. As Social Democrats, we ran on a goal on 60% compared to 1990, but we were forced by the left wing to increase it to 70%. And so in 2020, we did a deal with the Parliament and a new law, climate law, saying we need to reach 70% by 2030. We also had a midterm goal by 2025 this year to reach between 50 and 54% compared to 1990. Through the years from 2019 until this year, we have been criticized for doing too little to reach that goal. Today, we are not in the spectrum from 50 to 54. We are at 55%. So we are above the goal midterm. And we have now been recognized for doing policies that will get us to 70% by 2030. So it also tells a story on how fast things move. And so when we did the deal in the summer of 22, as when I was Minister of Taxation, on Danish industries, it was also a broad deal in the Parliament, but it's also saying to the Danish industries, we are going to invest in capturing carbon and storage. We invest 30 billion Danish kroners over the next 20 years. So the biggest polluting industries are going to lower their emissions. We have one single plant that are the biggest polluter in Denmark. It's called Aalborg Portland, produce cement in the north of Denmark. And so if we were not successful in bringing their emissions down, they emit about, or pollute about 2.2 million ton CO2 a year. So we're going to bring them down. Otherwise, we are not being able to reach 70% by 2030. Now they are investing, obviously, and we are investing. And I met with the Italian owners. They own, I think, 18 cement plants all over Europe. And they said, your head must be in cement if you think we are going to allow you to put an extra tax on our cement production in Denmark. We're going to close the plant, and then we can produce more in Germany and Poland and other places. And we said, well, you can do that, or you can, invest, and we'll invest together with you in CCS and create the first sustainable production of cement. And so they are doing that, and they're actually going to lower it. And if everything is right, we're going to be nearly at zero in Aalborg on that single plant by 2030. So it just tells you the story of how fast things move. And so as Minister of Taxation, I did also taxes on transportation and aviation. And so also then trying to figure out how do we lower emissions from our agricultural sector. Since we have lowered emissions from industries, from taxation, from the transportation sector, the agricultural and food sector today is due to 1/3 of all emissions from Denmark. By 2030, it will be half of all emissions, since other sectors are going down. So if we're not lowering emissions from the food and agricultural sector, we are not going to be successful. And so that's why, as part of that, we decided when we formed a new bipartisan government at a new election in 2022 in Denmark, we decided that we will introduce a carbon dioxide tax on livestock as the first country in the whole world. And so it's my task as Minister of Taxation to figure out how to do it. And so I started it very well. Where have you had some experiences? You had it in New Zealand, you had it in the Netherlands. Two very different cases, but both places, they were not successful. And so we used the formula that we know in Denmark, what we call the three-part, where at the labor market you have the employers, you have the employees, you have the government, sitting together, negotiating the terms that are due on the labor market. And so we sat together with the largest agricultural, the Food and Agricultural Council, the largest green NGO in Denmark, 5 ministers from the government, municipalities, others parties. We were actually 8 parties last spring, with the goal of negotiating how do we reduce emissions from the agricultural sector. It was about introducing a tax on livestock, but it was also about introducing a tax on peatlands, since we have drained lands for centuries and decades actually in Denmark, dating back to 1864, when we lost about 1/3 of the land in a war with the Germans. It's not so good. So we needed to, figure out what we lost on the outside, we need to win on the inside. How do we create food production to deliver for the population in Denmark and other places? And so 60% of the Danish landscape is agricultural land. So now we are going to take out peatlands that are polluting our atmosphere. And as a part of that deal, we also focused on higher water quality, recognizing that we are not living up to the European Water Framework Directive, where we should actually be finalized in a good water quality, Denmark being a small country, surrounded by waters and fjords. So that was a second part of that deal, focusing on nitrogen pollution. A third part of the deal was actually nature and biodiversity, since we have a biodiversity crisis that are probably even bigger than the climate crisis. So how do we create even more forest and land, increasing our forest in Denmark by 40%, planting 1 billion trees over the next 20 years. If it translates into you going around the world 38 times. And also that is also obviously a tool in terms of lowering emissions. And it was also about creating growth and jobs in our food and agricultural sector. And that's also the convincing argument for our climate policies in Denmark, that we're doing it on some pretty key principles. First of all, we want to do it in a way where we are not seeing protest on the streets. So we need to do it in a way where we are all on board and where we are creating jobs and growth and not the opposite. Second of all, that we take care of our own pollutions, so we are not moving out industries or agricultural farming in other places where they then can pollute. It's also should be social, fair, and balanced. So all these principles are obviously very keystone, but it's also a part of Denmark having a robust economy, investing in the sectors. And so all these 4 elements translate into us taking out 15% of our current farmland to forest, to undraining of peatlands, to protect our fjords and seas, to protect our climate, and doing in a way where farmers can then grow even more, produce even more extensively on the robust lands that are not polluting our fjords and seas by nitrogen or polluting our atmosphere. So that's a balance of the deal. It's reshaping 10% of our landscape. So it's also about creating big areas for forest and biodiversity. And so we have debated this in Parliament. There's been deals for many, many years. And they have that in common, that they have never really fully been implemented. I'm sure that you recognize that, as a parliamentarian, we're focusing on creating solutions on concrete problems. And so when we have done a deal and we have solved the problem, we move on to the next problem. And so the task of implementing is always key, obviously. And we have not been that successful in implementing our deals on climate, on agriculture, etc. So we decided to create a new ministry with the simple task of implementing this one deal. And so I was asked to lead this ministry, and I thought in the beginning, okay, I felt really warm about it because I had, been an very important part of the deal. But on the other hand, how cool is it to be a minister of implementation? It's pretty cool, actually, since it's a lot of policies and it's a huge deal, and it's going to reshape our landscape, and it's about doing it in partnership with the food and agricultural sector, in a partnership with the green organizations, in partnership with municipalities. So we created 23 local green tripartites, and they are now in the process of drawing the new map of Denmark. Within this year, end of this year, we have 98 municipalities in Denmark. They should vote on and approve a new map of Denmark. It's not finalized, obviously, since all projects are not carried out, but it's about seeing where are the potential of taking our peatlands, where are the potential for this forest, how do we need to reshape our landscape to protect our fjords and seas. It's also about introducing new regulation, obviously a tax on peatlands that are not taken out of production. That tax will be in place, in effect, by 28. These weeks, I'm negotiating with Parliament a new regulation on what can you do on your fields in terms of how much we try to translate into saying, okay, if you are in an area with a fjord and we see a lot of pollution in this fjord, how much do we need to reduce to be able to create decent water quality and live up to the Water Framework Directive? And so if you translate into the fields, how much do we have to lower the nitrogen pollution? And so it translates into the single farmer saying, okay, then with my quota, how can I, what kind of crops can I use on my fields, etc. So it's a very difficult task, but we're doing that. So it's also about building a toolbox that can actually be implemented. That's just not that short, but an introduction to the Green Deal, to my job as Minister of Green Transition, and also as Denmark, taking over the presidency of the European Union in a few weeks. It's also our hope to use this as an inspiration, but also to influence, obviously, policies at the European level as well. Thank you very much.
Super. Jeppe Bruus, thank you. Please join us. Minister, I mean, you hit on some of the kind of key points there that just shows what is a fairly unprecedented scale of the plan that you've got. 250,000 hectares of forestry, 1 billion trees, as you talked about, 140,000 hectares of peatland re-wetted, the nitrogen regulation, the unprecedented first ever tax on carbon emissions from agriculture. How did you do it when others haven't been able to forge the kind of consensus that you appear to have done here in Denmark?
Yeah, at the same time when we were negotiating this deal last spring, farmers were protesting on the streets in Brussels against proposals from the European Commission. Ursula von der Leyen had proposed some suggestions as probably also a part of the re-election campaign, and they had to withdraw or take back some of the proposals, the Commission. So at the same time, in that environment, we were sitting at the same table in Denmark. So how the heck did we do that? That's also why I started by the story about industries and transportation, because the context here is important. As we are lowering emissions from other sectors, they also look at the agricultural and food sector, saying, now we have taken our responsibility. We are investing our money in producing a sustainable in our transportation sector, in our industries. Now you have to do the same. Otherwise, if we are going to reach 70%, we need to, increase the tax on Danish industries, for example. So that context is important. Another context that is important in Denmark is that we have a robust economy. So when we do this, we invest also. So we're also going to invest in opportunities for farmers. We are investing 10 billion Danish kroners in biogas production. We are investing 10 billion Danish kroners in pyrolysis. It's on an early stage, but it's a part of, an opportunity to also be a farmer that are also a energy producer. We invest in research and new technologies, things that you can take down and use. I think maybe I saw Arla on the screen as well. Now we are, subsidizing food for cows, recognizing that a cow have 4 stomachs. It pollutes in both ends. It will probably do so in 2030 as well, maybe also in 2035, said with a smile. So how do we then lower emissions, recognizing that it's biological processes, both with the livestock but also on the field? And so we have created the tax with a discount of 60%. And so when we invent new technologies, not only in Denmark, but when we approve it and make it into use, far out, we can lower the discount. So the goal is that you can have a farm with no pollutions at all, but then you also need to have the opportunities as a farmer to invest. So it's the same principle that we did with industries. We said to the industries, you can actually invest in industrial production, even of cement, without polluting. So if you're not investing, you're going to pay the tax. But it's an incentive to lower your emissions and also to increase your competitiveness, also with you other companies across Europe, because consumers and companies will also ask for a cleaner product in their own account of their footprints. And so we also see, there was a concern back in 2022 when I was a Minister of Taxation, with a risk to lower the jobs in the Danish industries. Now, the tax is in place here in 25. I haven't met a CEO of a Danish industry company or a employer saying, we are concerned for our jobs due to this tax. On the other hand, I've met a lot of people saying, where are the hands and heads we need to actually implement this green transition? So obviously it's not a free lunch, but it's also a opportunity to actually have a greater competitiveness. And it's the same argument we have used with the farmers. And I think the reason why they're there is the first, they are pressured from other sectors. 2, they see that after the climate election, back in 2019, there are a great majority in the Danish parliament that are willing to regulate farmers even harder than part of the deal. So their argument, I think they're right, said, it's better for us to sit at the table to actually influence this and to make sure that we have a framework of regulation from now until 2030 and 2035, instead of us risking, after new elections, we'll see even harder regulation. So a foreseeable structure of regulation that the farmer can invest in, and thereby also creating new opportunities for jobs and investment. So that was some of the context that, I think made us successful last spring.
A couple of follow-up questions, one of which I'd meant to ask you when we were at the GFFA in Berlin in January. And forgive me, I should know this. The tax on the emissions in agriculture, is it hypothecated? By that I mean the proceeds that come from the tax, will that be reinvested solely in agriculture?
Yeah, we did that actually back in 22 with industries. Every single krona went back to actually help companies that have the hardest way of, transforming their production into be a sustainable production. The same here. Every single krona will not go into, building schools or the healthcare system. It will be reinvested. And plus that, a lot of another money. So we have created a green fund of 43 billion Danish kroner, investing in forest, investing also in a new tool. So when farmers are retired, around 1/3 of all farmers will retire over the next 10 years. So when a farmer are willing to sell his land and it's a robust place where you can actually produce very heavily, we'll buy it out and we'll give the offer to a farmer that have lands that are polluting our fjords and seas or that are peatlands, so we can do a swap deal. So we have created this fund to be able to actually do this as a tool. It's very, very effective. And right now, farmers are saying, can you invest more in this, because it'll actually ease the process of restructuring the farmland.
You talked about inspiring some of the other member states. As I kind of said in the introduction, you were trailblazing, perhaps even ahead of your time. The political context, some would argue, in Europe has changed after the elections last year. Do you think that the approach that you've taken in Denmark, which some arguably would say was repeated to some extent with the vision of agriculture, do you think it can work in other member states?
Yeah, I think it's pretty uncommon that you, as a new minister of a whole new ministry, the only one of its kind, are asked, when commissioners are in Denmark, are asked for a meeting. They will actually come to listen to the talk that I just gave to you, and also to figure out how do we use this as tools that we can implement also at the European level. And so I try to inspire and also to be very concrete on how can do it. But obviously we are also concerned after the new president across some big water, and the rearming of Europe, which all Danes agree on. We are one of the countries that are strongest in our support for Ukraine. From my perspective and from the Danish government's perspective, it's even more important in sustainable fuels, in wind energy, solar energy, biogas. It's terrible that 3 years after in the war, we are still giving more money to Russia for buying gas and oil than we are giving money to Ukraine. And so that's also why I'm very much in favor of my good friend Dan Jørgensen, who are now Commissioner on Energy at the Commission, and their proposal of actually tighten up and even banning the import from Russia, because it's terrible actually that we're still here. So we try to raise the argument that this transition is even more important, also to be self-supplying in the food and agricultural sector. But because it's also about producing sustainable proteins instead of importing them from soya productions around the world. And as I said, it's also about producing sustainable energy solutions.
So you touched on it. My final question to you, Minister, as part of this part of the program, you just touched on it, the geopolitics. What you did in Denmark, the vision for the future of agriculture, we're all emerged in what feels like a different world now, given the new administration in the US. But if I listen to you, your argument sounds to me like the geopolitics actually haven't changed in this. It's actually, if anything, it's made it even more important for you to drive the momentum behind what you've done here in Denmark and indeed in Europe.
Yeah, a key points there. First of all, critical infrastructure. We see almost on a daily basis the attacks from Russia and other states. Shadow Fleet and the EC, etc. So it's important for us that the farming is also a critical infrastructure. Two, climate change have changed the way that farmers can produce many places in the south of Europe. We all know the story about the winemakers. They are trying to, look to northern Germany, even Denmark, for new fields as climate are changing. So it creates a even bigger need for new tools in producing new plants and new crops. And we have Danish companies that are far ahead, investing in new technologies in grass, etc. It's a long process, but it's about the seeds being more robust to climate change. Not only in the Danish climate, but also in other climates. So it's also about combining what we're good at in the food and agricultural sector with what we're good at in the biosector. Everyone know Novo Nordisk, but they have other companies, Novonesis and others, that are actually investing in new ways of using. For example, we have a company in Søborg where I live, 21st Biosolution. They produce milk protein without cows. So they have a small production where by fermentation, etc., they actually produce milk protein. The same is a smaller part of Arla's business to do milk protein and also do milk powder that you obviously can export to countries where they have no cows and farming. The Middle East, for example, when I was at COP28 in Dubai have a vision of being self-sufficient with milk and meat, but without any farming. And so when we try to, now we have done a growth team that are looking into how do we create even more growth and jobs in our food and agricultural sector, but it's also combining the food and agricultural sector with the biosector. Not to erase or to outcompete the farm and traditional farm and food sector in Denmark, but actually to strengthen our possibilities to produce in a sustainable way, but also to export and thereby creating even more revenue, both for the farm and food agricultural sector, jobs, and to increase the growth of a robust Danish economy. And I'm I've debated a little bit with some of the commissioners in the EU, our environmental commissioner and the commissioner for agriculture and food, and others, also the climate commissioner, on the new strategy that the European Commission is introducing in the fall on bioeconomy. They will present it, I think, in November. It's an open process at the moment. We'll have an event here in Copenhagen in December where I will host it on bioeconomy. For me, there's no clear definition on bioeconomy. But for me, bioeconomy is actually the story about how we've transformed a traditional Danish economy and also European through industrialization to a new economy where we'll get into net zero and in all sectors be in a sustainable way of producing. We have an aim of being net zero as a country by 2045. And I'm totally convinced we're going to reach it. So it's also about vertical farming. It's about more plant-based crops, but it's also creating a value chain where you can actually invest in, because we have farmers that will actually saying we have a pig production, but as a second side production, we would like to do some plant-based. But can we, if we invest, are there a demand on it? So it's also about creating new demands or new products, some probably also mixed products between different sectors. So we invest heavily in that as well.
Well, Minister, thank you very much indeed for joining us at the Regional Forum today. Really great pleasure and honour for us to have you with us. Thank you so much indeed. That brings to the end this part of the session. Thank you.